Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our regular council meeting of Monday, February the 14th. And a happy Valentine's Day to all of us that are here together. Oh, what a lovely day to enjoy this tradition. So I will now call tonight's meeting to order and begin by acknowledging that we are meeting virtually in a hybrid form upon the territory of the Sooke Nation. So for members of the public that are viewing tonight and members of council and staff that are here with us tonight, due to the recent public health directives, council is meeting in a hybrid format. So in this case, we have 4 members of council within the room, which would be myself along with Councillor Lajeunesse, Councillor Bateman, and Councillor Beddoes. Councillor Logans and Councillor St. Pierre and Councillor McMath are joining virtually online. And then in our room for staff would be our Chief Administrative Officer, Norm McInnes, as well as our Deputy Corporate Officer, Ms. Sarah Temple, and our Corporate Clerk, Ms. Jennifer Royer-Collard. So for tonight's meeting, we are trying our best to emulate a real meeting. So I would ask then that all members of council and all staff attending tonight have your videos on for the meeting, and members of the public, it is up to you if you wish to have your camera on or off. However, when you do address council, I ask that you have your camera on so we can see you. And this is so that we can be as visible to the viewing public as possible. So, because if we were in the room, you can't just hide under your desk, right? You need to be here and present like the rest of us. So thank you. Members, everyone seated within the room is wearing a mask and will for the entirety of the meeting. And it's entirely optional for those of you attending virtually because that would depend on where you are. So on that note, we'll get into tonight's agenda, and the item here then is first off, item 5 is approval of the agenda, and that is that the agenda for February 14th, 2022 regular meeting of council be adopted as amended, and that is the addition of correspondence as a new business item. So I'll look for someone to move that, please. Moved in the room by Councillor Bateman and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre online. Any questions? See none, all in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you. So next up is item 6, which is our public and statutory hearings. And the first one up is 6.1. And this is our bylaw number 837-728-04, Council Procedure Amendment Bylaw. So this here begins with a session for public input. So I'll ask the member of the public that's joined us, are you here tonight to address us on this item? Ms. Belford? I see you're still muted though.
I mean, after how long is one still needing to unmute? Anyway, no, I don't want, I'm not here to discuss or ask about this item.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I just wanted to be 100% sure. So I'll just confirm with our Deputy Corporate Officer, is that the only member of the public that is with us tonight? Yes. Okay, so seeing no other members, that would conclude our public input portion here. So that leads us to adoption of the bylaw. The recommendation is that council adopt the bylaw cited as council procedure amendment bylaw number 837-728-04, 2022. Moved in the room by Councillor Bateman and seconded by Councillor McMath. Thank you. We'll try to do one of each if I can. Any comments from anyone? Anyone online have any comments? We know we're adopting. Thank you. All those in favor, please, of adoption. Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 7 is meeting minutes, and there's just one item for me that stuck out a little bit. This is under the very last page under council reports. So under item 14, there's Mayor Tate reported, and it says here Paget Mason's check. I have no idea what that is.
Wow. I think that's probably an administrative error and we will take that out.
Okay, now I did think about it a little bit, and I might have shared with you that I've been asked to judge a pageant. Okay, so maybe if we could add in the Job's Daughter pageant. Yes, so then that would be likely. I think I thought about that's probably what that is. So any other corrections? Okay, so then I'll ask then that council adopt the following meeting minutes of council be adopted as amended. And that would be the January 20, or pardon me. Yes, the January 24th regular meetings as amended, please. Okay, so moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Any other questions from anyone? Then all those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you. All members of council, can I ask you just to hold your hand up a little bit longer than normal, because I'm looking in a lot of places right now, and just so I don't miss your vote, okay, or get it wrong. But correct me if I do. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to item 8, which is our report of the Chief Administrative Officer. So over to Mr. McInnes.
No update today, Your Worship, but I do look forward to bringing the strategic priorities chart update to council next Monday at the Committee of the Whole.
Great, thank you, Mr. McInnes. So that leads us to item 9, which is our public question and comment period. And I'll turn this over to our corporate officer to introduce member of the public.
Thank you, Your Worship. We do have Ms. Belford joining us this evening, and she would like to speak to an item on the agenda.
Hi, I just really briefly, I wanted to commend staff and council for looking at moving forward with the emissions inventories that are being created or have been created. I'm hoping that they're going to be publicly available at some point, but also just getting the corporate emissions on track to go with the community emissions. This is really exciting, and I'd like to say thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Belford, for joining with us tonight and sharing those sentiments with us. We appreciate that. Okay, and I'll just confirm again that do we have any other remaining members of the public?
We do not.
Thank you, Ms. Temple. So that leads us to item 10, which is the consent agenda, and that would be that number 10.1 be adopted by general consent. Moving adoption by Councillor Logans and seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Any comments, Councillor Logans? Nope. Councillor Beddoes? Nope. Anything in the room? Anyone online? I'll call the question. All in favor, please. And that's anyone opposed. That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 11, our report section. And the first one up is 11.1, appointment of election officials. So the report is fairly straightforward. I'll just see if there's any questions from anyone. Getting to be that time in the term. Anyone? Nope. Okay, so the recommendation is that council appoints Sarah Temple as Chief Election Officer for the 2022 general local election, with power to appoint other election officials as required for the administration and conduct of the 2022 general local election pursuant to Section 58 of the Local Government Act, and that council appoint Caroline Mushada as Deputy Chief Election Officer for the 2022 general local election. Moved by Councillor Bateman and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Anything to say, Councillor Bateman?
Well, would start your engines. Is that appropriate?
Well, it's been said. Thank you. Councillor St. Pierre, anything? No. Anyone? Nope. I'll call the question then. All those in favor, please. None opposed. That's unanimous. Congratulations, Ms. Temple. I see that as an elevation in your career. So well done. But could you please turn the timer off? Perfect. Thank you. This is flashing here. All right. Excellent. 11.2 UBCM Strengthen Community Services Grant Application 2022 intake. We have a report here. Is there anything to add from staff?
Nothing, Your Worship, other than we're working diligently on the current 2021 intake, and the Sioux Shelter Society has requested that we support them in a application for the 2022 intake. We community of our size is eligible for a grant of up to $450,000.
Thank you, Mr. McInnes. Any comments or questions from anyone? Councillor St. Pierre, go ahead.
I had some thoughts when I was looking at the actual application. Essentially, the 4 pieces that they're looking for or looking to support, I think are all potentially things that our community could really use. But the 4th one, which was in terms of capacity building, I think was really valuable. And I'm hoping that there'll be some emphasis placed on that in the application.
Yeah, Your Worship, to Councillor St. Pierre, I think that one of the criteria is that this money cannot be for ongoing operational issues. So I think that capacity building piece is something that certainly was identified in the 2021 grant application, and I expect it to be so in 2022 as well.
Excellent. Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, so just speaking on behalf of the Sioux Homelessness Coalition, the Sioux Shelter Society has done great work so far with the first year's grant, and I think we'd like to have an opportunity at a committee of the whole to share the work that the Shelter Society has done. They have an excellent PowerPoint that could perhaps be shared, and let you know about the strategic plan that the coalition is developing. So perhaps we have our 3rd strat plan session in late March, and so perhaps later in the spring we can have a committee of the whole opportunity.
Okay, so why don't I turn to you for a business arising to make that motion? So we'll deal with the one in front of us, but I think a motion business arising would be to put that direction into a resolution so that we can capture it, just so it doesn't fall off, right? Okay. All right, so the first one here then is that council approves the District of Sooke application to the Strengthened Community Services Program 2022 intake and direct staff to provide overall grant management. So that's moved by Councillor Bateman and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Any questions? Anything on the motion? See none, all in favor then? Anyone opposed? Councillor McMath, are you opposed? Did I move too fast? You're in favor? Yes. Okay, so I take that's unanimous then. Thank you. Okay, so I think a business arising would be something that council directs staff to invite the Sioux Shelter Society to present and share their progress at a upcoming committee of the whole meeting, when we can receive such presentation fully in person. Hopefully. So I don't think if we put a date on it, I think, so that would be a motion. So are you comfortable moving that? Let's move it. Let's move it. Let's get something on there and then move it. And then you can speak to it once it's been seconded.
Could I modify it?
You can.
Okay, so to invite the Sioux Shelter Society and the Sioux Homelessness Coalition
Okay.
to share, to present and share their progress at a committee of the whole meeting in the spring, early summer. Oh, no, I see. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, that's fine.
when it can be done in person.
will
I think that's,
complicate it.
okay. So moved by Councillor
Yes.
Bateman. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor McMath. Thank you. Okay, any comments from anyone? Okay, see nothing. All those in favor, please. And any opposed? None opposed. Thank you. The squares keep moving around a bit, so.
Apologies, I'm trying to fit the resolutions up with all the people and I'm
No, I understand that. It's just when the squares move, I'm like getting dizzy, sorry. Okay, moving on to 11.3 is the corporate emissions inventory and reduction targets. So we have our report here with some generous or kind public feedback. Mr. McInnes, would you like to introduce your report or the report.
Thank you, Your Worship. A fairly simple report as a requirement for milestone 2 of the Partnership for Climate Protection, which is an FCM reporting module. We need to have a resolution from council for both community emissions reduction targets and corporate emission reduction targets. We have the first one. We're looking for the second one tonight to mirror the community emissions target.
Thank you, Mr. McInnes. So the questions I'll ask first, is there any questions of staff on the report? Seeing none. Okay, the recommendation is that council adopt a 50% reduction by 2030 target for corporate emissions. So that's moved by Councillor Bateman and seconded by Councillor Logans. Any comments, Councillor Bateman?
Well, I just wanted to note, I checked in with our climate action coordinator today because back in 2018, Sooke was recognized by Ubcm as a carbon neutral municipality. And she replied back and said, we were able back then to qualify for carbon neutrality because we could account for organics diversions, food scraps going to Heartland. And that put us over the top for carbon neutral. But this new PCP protocol is much more exhaustive than the KRIP reporting. And this includes vehicle fleet, outdoor lighting, wastewater, buildings and facilities, and solid waste management. So it's quite a different ballgame.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so it is more fitting of the times we're in now. Okay. So this has been moved and seconded. Anything from Councillor Logans? Any comments from anyone online? Nope, in the room. Okay, all those in favor. Oh, sorry, Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, I just want to comment. I do like the wording that we're now using reduction targets, and I like that as a better word than goals. So
Yes.
one time we're throwing goals around, hopefully we receive that number, but it's a target. So I like that.
That's good feedback. Okay, all those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you. There was none opposed. 11.4 is carry forward of 2021 permit revenue fees. Mr. McInnes, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. As the report suggests, subsequent to the 5-year financial plan being adopted on December 13th of 2021, going through year end, we did realize that there's a significant excess revenue from what was budgeted in 2021 from permitting. So we're asking council tonight to allow us to make an amendment to the 2022 to 2026 5-year financial plan, bring forward $225,000 of that excess revenue into the 22 budget in order for us to deal with a backlog in both subdivision and building permits. The goal would be to bring on a third building inspector. We've got a chief building inspector and 2 building inspectors now, so we would bring on a 4th for the cadre. Bring on some additional clerical help as well to basically deal with communicating with applicants. And we would, my goal is to look specifically at section 11.18 of the building bylaw. 11.18 of the building bylaw is the section that deals with when we must issue a building permit. So we would look at, and it references 11.2 and 11.3 of the building bylaw. So my goal is to look at checklist A, which is for residential building permits, make sure that what we're asking for in that checklist is congruent with sections 11.2 and 11.3. Another piece in the issue of a building permit, 11.18, is dealing with qualified professionals and when we need things submitted by qualified professionals. So the goal would be to look at things that are impacting time for processing and cost that are minimal risks for maybe not asking for at this point in time. So there's a number of things in section 10 of the bylaw requiring when we need qualified professionals. Those qualified professionals are as busy as anyone else right now. So getting the work from qualified professionals does add to time, does add to cost. If there are things that are of low risk that maybe we could forego asking for, that's the analysis that we're going to go through with our building department over the next few days here.
That's great, Mr. McInnes. I'm glad that you found a few spots to sort of narrow in and focus on. And I think just finding a fourth building inspector, for those of us that have sat here a while, they're not easy to find. So I'll see. Councillor St. Pierre, I see your hand is up. Go ahead, please.
I think this is incredibly good news. We've been hearing from the building community that the permit process seems to be a little bit slow. One of the things I'd like to do is maybe repeat what Councillor Beddoes was talking about with targets. I know that everybody compares us to Langford with their one-day turnaround, which is lovely, but we can't seem to quite manage that. And then, of course, we're comparing ourselves to how it was going maybe a few years ago when things were much lengthier. I would love it if during this analysis we are looking at a specific target, like what's the turnaround time we're actually looking for? Because otherwise we could look for efficiencies, but then we might take one step forward, two steps back if we actually add additional things in the future. I like the idea of actually doing some risk management, looking at low risk items that we can potentially take away, and especially with the smaller development permits where it's one single unit where quite frankly the risk is probably going to be quite low. So good news all around, and I would love to see it if we can actually find some targets.
Thanks, Councillor St. Pierre. As our liaison to the Land Use Committee, I appreciate your taking the time to come up with that. That's good feedback as well. Other members of council? Councillor Bateman, go ahead.
Yeah, so a few questions. I guess all of us on Thursday, or many of us, saw the Sooke News Mirror headline stating building permit application backlog hits 3 months. Now, is that accurate?
No.
Okay. And as you state in the report, I believe we're at 47 days now for a low density residential permit.
That's the average.
Yes. And that is down from 68 days in 2019. I'd like to address one of his Mr. Haldane's quotes within the article is that the backlog is a matter of corporate culture and micromanaging. Any comment on that?
No comment.
Okay. So I know where this is going. This is good. Here's a comment. What about this urban myth and the misinformation about Langford's legendary 48-hour permit approval process?
Not familiar with their process. I do know that we have sort of a two-step process with our applications. One is an administrative process. So we have a checklist A in our form for residential buildings. If that checklist is full, we accept the application. But then there's a second technical review that goes through a number of departments, and that technical review oftentimes surfaces things that should be in the application, as I said, within section 11.2 or 11.3. That's not necessarily on the checklist. So part of my goal short term here is to make sure there's an alignment between our checklist A and those two pieces in the bylaw. If we had an application that had everything required, it would take significantly less time than the average to process the application.
Yeah, I think as a statement in terms of Langford's 48-hour permit, there are any number of hoops and department approvals that need to be completed, including complete paperwork by the applicant to get into that 48-hour queue. And yeah, I'll speak more later. Thank you.
Comments, others?
Yeah, I'm really pleased that our CAO is tackling this problem head on. You remember when we first were elected a few years ago, it was one of our number one priorities. There's been some headway, but I don't think we're there yet. And if we need to throw some more resources at it, and our CEO is asking for those resources, I don't have a problem okaying those resources. But I hope to see some results, because I get beat up in the public quite a bit about this one topic, and I'd really love to come back and say, no, it's not even close to that, but it's tough. So get her done. Thank you.
Okay, I see Councillor McMath and then Councillor St. Pierre. Go ahead, Councillor McMath.
There seems to be a gap on the narrative of what's actually the issue. So the community that's sort of challenging this is saying that there are significant delays, and that they will come in, and if they come in, then their items will get pushed to the top. And that where is the breakdown? If Langford can do a turnaround of 48 hours and staff is saying that the checklist isn't being complete, which causes delays, where is the communication breakdown? Is it that it's not an intuitive form? Is it that their liaison who's managing their construction project is pushing things forward and the client doesn't understand? What are the top three issues for the delays in this process?
Your worship, to Councillor McMath, I think as I identified, the requirements under 11.2 and 11.3 may be onerous. I don't know that the evaluation will go forward. And then the second one would be the requirements that we have for qualified professionals to submit various things. So we do have a major process review underway with our grant, but we do need to have a look at some of these low risk activity that we can possibly make some changes on. So you can anticipate possibly some short-term changes to the building bylaw in the short term, or the ability to forego some of the things that are approved in the bylaw. As council knows, my number one job is to make sure that policy and bylaw is enforced. So the policy framework piece is my piece in this, and if we don't have it exactly right, I'll bring it back to council and make it a little bit more workable if that is the case, what's holding things up.
And then just to follow up on that, where does the 3 months piece come from?
I don't know. I'm confident with the data that's in the report. The fact that we did go from 43 days in 2021 to 2020, to 47 days in 2021, I think is a product of not anything more than just volume. You can see the numbers in the report. The volume is significantly up, and we haven't kept pace with resource allocation for the numbers that are being reported in 2021. Where the 3 months come from, the 47 days is an average, so some will be more, some will be less.
Okay, and then last piece, just are we doing a follow-up on that unfortunate headline, just in regards to what the district is doing to tackle that issue?
I hope that the writer will be watching tonight and ask more questions.
Sorry, no, I meant in regards to our communications person.
I'm not quite sure what the question is. If you are asking if there'll be
Sure,
a
I'll
press
rephrase
release
it.
go out because of the meeting tonight, that's not intention, but your worship, I'll ask for clarification on the question.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I'm looking for, is just in response to that article. I would love if we could put something out to follow up on that piece for clarification for the community, because people will read a headline and they'll run with like that negative incitement that it creates. And so if we can just have a piece following up from our communications coordinator, I think it would be fantastic.
Understood.
Okay, Councillor St. Pierre.
Thank you. I wanted to follow up on the piece for corporate culture because part of the narrative, as Councillor McGrath has pointed out, is that our staff don't necessarily have the time or the will to help. And I believe it's lack of resources, as Mr. McInnes has pointed out. I'm hoping that with the extra funding and extra resources, potentially we can try and turn that around and show the community that staff is there to help. I really think that that piece of the narrative has to shift. We are here to help. I think that has to come out.
Okay.
Your Worship, to Councillor St. Pierre, and I think that's part of the story here. We are absolutely committed to working with people through this process. And, you know, we can reject applications that aren't full, but a lot of people don't understand this fairly complex process to getting an application in and getting it approved. We're committed to working with people through the process and making sure that what we need is in fact in the application. And as I said, perhaps our building bylaw is a little too onerous right now in a couple of spots, and we will have a look at that this week.
Councillor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, I was just going to ask that very question. Should we look at our bylaws and try and make them less onerous and make them easier to follow? And I am glad that this is being addressed, and I hope that we can find some efficiencies to help move this forward, because I hear constantly from the building community that the length of time to get a building permit for, like on a serviced approved lot, is just, it seems way too long from what I'm hearing from many of the builders in town. And these are not rookie builders. These are guys that have been in the business for 40, 50 years. And I just, it's hard for me to believe that they don't know the process.
Couple of responses, Your Worship, if I could, to Councillor Lajeunesse. The risk management piece is, you know, I don't want to do a deep dive into the building bylaw at this point in time. I do want to have a surface review of those things that are low risk, and that we could maybe in the short term deal with, leave the deep dive to the grant application and the process that's been laid out in the grant from municipal affairs. But I do want to just remind council that the building bylaw that was adopted on February 8th, let me just get the date here, I believe it was February the 8th. February the 8th, 2021, was built on the template from the Municipal Insurance Association. And insurers and legal people, part of their job is to offload risk. We may have to take on a little bit more risk than we're doing through our processing right now. And I hope council will be amenable to that. And as I say, we will bring back a subsequent report on what things need to change short term in the building bylaw.
Okay. So it seems to me that we're making some headway. I will share that I've been drowning in this since about November through till February, to the point where it was causing severe personal stress. And then it frustrated me because it's not my job to be someone's secretary and running back and forth, collecting information. What was I saying? What was this? What do you mean? What is this? A lot of phone calls, a lot of anger, a lot of frustration. And so it isn't just one or two persons behind a headline. It was nonstop, overwhelming exhaustion for me. And it's because my phone number is public, and it was in the absence of a phone call, I'm getting phoned. So I have been talking to staff about this. I have been raising the concern. And so I'm glad to see something come forward here, because the status quo is complete disservice to our community. It must change. So that's where I know Mr. McInnes put a lot of time into this, working with the leadership team. to come up with something that is workable. Part of the challenge, as I reflected on it, I think it's the length of the pandemic, the ongoing frustration. It's even us right now, I find this setup frustrating in a hybrid way. I can't hear what you're thinking. I can barely see you. And that is amplified, is what everybody is carrying. And then just intense interest and demand. We live in a beautiful place. It's something to be proud of, but it's something where when folks sometimes ask, well, what about tourism? And I'm like, well, we want more people here because some say we don't. So I'm lost now in this, but it's been exhausting. So we're finding a way forward. And I really appreciate the work that Mr. McInnes has done here. We do need to focus on an improvement for customer service delivery, and the 12 weeks or the 3 months. I myself personally will be going through the building permit process, and I walked in off the street just so I knew what I would be dealing with, how long for a complete application, and I was told 12 weeks. And so, yeah, that I freaked out because it's 2 windows and a door and some plumbing. Now I haven't put in my application in, so the clock doesn't start yet for me, but that's what I was told. And so it comes from somewhere, and I heard it from our staff member, not her fault, not the messenger's fault. It's just, that's what was said. So that to me was unacceptable. So we're finding a way forward. And then I think just as we come out of COVID and there's ability to just have more face-to-face conversations, I think that goes a long way. I think that some of our staff have not had a good opportunity to even meet one another, to share ideas, to say, hey, is this, I don't know, but I can certainly feel that with some of my council colleagues, because we've been apart for so long that it's sometimes hard to communicate everything over a text message or an email. And when you put things in email, you want to make sure they're accurate because it's an email and it can be FOI'd and where's it going to show up and blah, blah, blah. Whereas if you just have a conversation, it's different in person, where you can actually see the body in front of you and work through things together. So I know that this too will pass. And so I do appreciate what's here. And I'm kind of grateful that others on council have also heard the same or felt the same pressure as me, because I felt like I was alone and drowning in it. So here we are anyway, so I'll leave it at that. I do like the idea of a media release to say, we're hearing, because the building and development community is an important one to us. We all have our part in building a community, whether it's and providing housing and opportunities for businesses to relocate, for young people to find their way, for skills to develop and so forth. We all have our part in this. So perhaps just something to say, we have someone who's far more clever than I to write the media release, but to Councillor McMath's point, I do agree with you there in terms of messaging out. It is something that's sort of in a draft mayoral monthly message, but that didn't go out. That hasn't gone out yet because we haven't deliberated fully on this item tonight. So that will be one way of getting word out, and maybe something else as well, just to say, we're hear you, we're responding, this is what we're doing. It's not just a couple more people. It's actually, Mr. McInnes has already brought forward several areas, or, within a few that require some focus, and they're already on it. So I think that's a good message to say, we hear you, we're on it, we're doing something. And this piece now was to get council behind this recommendation. So I'll leave it at that. Okay, so we do have a recommendation here, and that is that council approve the carry forward of 225,000 of the net 2021 building permit revenue from 2021 building permit fees received, and direct staff to reserve the funds in an unrestricted surplus account that will be used for additional planning and building staff needs in 2022. Moved by Councillor Lajeunesse and seconded by Councillor Logans. Anything further from members of council? Councillor Logans?
Yeah, I want to just say that it's been a long process, obviously, that we've been working on. And I think it's really wonderful of our staff and CAO to listen to the comments that are brought forward by the public and listen to the criticisms and bring this item forward in the agenda. It's a very creative way to start to solve the issues that have come up in the past few months. And because of that, I think that some criticism is very undue and unnecessary. Obviously, we're going to have ebbs and flows, but I think it's great that we have a team that is working around the clock to make sure things are going well. And when they don't go well, they come up with solutions to make it better. So this is a good step in the right direction.
Thanks, Councillor Logans. Anything else? Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, so I think, you know, this issue is not new in Sooke nor anywhere in BC or Canada for that matter. That it's the reason why the province is seeking to reform the permitting approval system. So we have a $500,000 grant to modernize our own system, which will include electronic applications, and e-permitting is the #1 wish of the British Columbia Construction Association. And it's certainly not a new issue in Sooke. Early in my term, I reviewed the minutes of the Land Use and Environment Committee, a group set up by Mayor Milne in January 2012. It was chaired by Councillor Pearson and included at various times most of council of the day, including Councillor Haldane. At its very first meeting, the committee identified priorities, the need to provide clear timelines for applicants, streamline planning process, reduce lead time for development starts. And they also discussed at their March 19th, 2012 meeting, 48-hour building permit process for registered builders. So this issue has been discussed and looked at, and this was back when Sooke was relatively quiet, post-recession. Our building starts really didn't pick up till 2015, 16 or so, I believe is about right. And now, of course, they've raced ahead at a tremendous clip. I think it's also important to note that in 2019, when this council made its strategic plan, that item 1.2.3, which followed the hiring of a chief administrative officer and a director of operations, is, quote, improve efficiency and staffing capacity of building permit department. And that work began immediately with the hiring of the chief building official, the new building bylaw, and the improved permitting times, which we've discussed tonight, right down to 43 days in 2020, 25 days. Anyway, I guess the key point is that things are happening, and we are in fact acting on an issue here that has plagued Sooke for at least a decade. And so all credit to and empathy to, I have a friend who's a year into his zoning attempt to get a rezoning on his property, and he's deeply frustrated. So I understand, and yet at the same time, here we go into, I think, as we'll see in the next item on the agenda, by September of next year, we should have a whole new system with staff trained up to implement it, simplified and streamlined.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. Any other comments on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please. And anyone opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you and good luck. Okay, bylaws section is next. So 12.1 is adoption. Hold on a second here. We're on 7052 Maple Park Terrace. So adoption, yep. So that is that council adopt the bylaws cited as Sooke Core Sewer Specified Area Amendment Bylaw number 829-147-41 2021. Moved by Councillor Lajeunesse and seconded by Councillor Logans. All those in favor of adoption? And that's unanimous. Thank you. And okay, the next one is that council, just trying to see which one I can read better without my glasses on. That council adopt the bylaw cited as Sooke Core Sewer Specified Area Amendment Bylaw number 830-147-42 2021. Moved by Councillor Lajeunesse and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. All those in favor of adoption, please. And that's unanimous as well. Thank you. Thank you for increasing the font. Yes, the glasses fog up. Okay. 12.3 is zoning bylaw proposed amendments. So quite a report here, but I'll turn it over to staff to take us through this report.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen here with a very short PowerPoint presentation just with the highlights. All right, so just on the screen here, these are a summary of the amendments that are being proposed with this bylaw. So the first of the zoning amendments proposed are administrative recommendations for changes. First one being Tominey Road Mixed Use Comprehensive Development Zone. This is no longer a requirement as there are currently no properties with this zoning in place. The property that did utilize this zoning has since been rezoned to medium lot residential R2 zone. So for this reason, staff are recommending that it be removed as a comprehensive development zone in the zoning bylaw. The next of these administrative changes is to correct section numbering of the Local Government Act. So in 2015, when these amendments were brought forward, the numbering in our zoning bylaw were not amended to reflect the new sections. So this is another administrative change. And the last for this first item is to correct number referencing in the C4 zone for a commercial school. So when cannabis amendments were brought forward, there were sections that were not also labeled correctly, just with the additional use added. So we're recommending that administrative change. The next section is the amendment to the definition of lot area. What we're recommending is to go back to original a definition, which is more simplistic for both the applicant and its staff to administer. And it doesn't include all the exclusions that we currently have in our zoning bylaw, which ultimately requires more professional assistance from a surveyor to then calculate specific areas of these exclusion areas to determine what is the actual lot area amount. So simply put, it would be in most instances, taking the titled area and using that for your base calculation. This also helps contribute towards amenity contributions, maximizing your lot coverage percentage and other density components. The third is the vacation accommodations and secondary suites. So the practice has been since receiving a legal opinion, which is mentioned in the report, that because the single family dwelling definition includes secondary suites being contained within those units, that also vacation accommodation can be considered within a secondary suite. Just because by virtue of that definition, secondary suites are single family. So we wanted to make it clear that the vacation accommodation could be in the single family as well as the secondary suite. The next fourth section is amend the setbacks for water. So council will be familiar with this. Over the last year, we had it was approximately 10 applications for development variances to the streamside protection and enhancement area. What this ended up doing was creating a longer period of time where applications were being reviewed before, in the instance of a building permit, the variance being granted, we could then proceed with issuing clearance from that, the establishment of the streamside protection enhancement area, and then issuing the building permit. In conversations that I've had with the province's riparian areas coordinator and understanding the legislation and what we're trying to accomplish at the local level, staff have determined that the recommended amendment would look at having the streamside protection enhancement area established by a professional as we currently have, but foregoing that variance requirement by at least having whatever the streamside protection enhancement area is. So if it's been determined by the professional on the property, that should be 15 meters, that be established, and then development would occur in a buffer area 1 meter beyond that. So essentially 16 meters. So you take the established professionals streamside protection enhancement area, add plus 1 meter, and then anything beyond that would then become your new development area. And we would see less applications now having to come forward for a variance because the professional has confirmed that they comply with those provincial requirements. So we saw that as a good compromise in our discussion with applicants as well, explaining this intent. The fifth one is the correction of the steep slopes and steep slope setbacks, section 3.25. What we noted after amendments, so in March of 2020, before the pandemic had begun, first and second reading had come forward with these zoning amendments. Of course, there was a period of time before we held a public hearings again. And so in September of 2020, when this came forward again for public hearing, there was an administrative error that we had determined after that the bylaw that was presented was not the same bylaw that was given first and second reading. So wanting to return back now to that original wording, which was the 30%, which would be consistent with what was originally presented to council as well as the public. And also with, in talking with professionals, that 30% will also make a difference in the realistic nature of developable sites. So we see that as a good return to the intent of what was proposed at first and second reading. The sixth amendment is the inclusion of the small suite in the RU1 zone. So you recall last summer, we brought forward a number of amendments to include these small suites in just keeping with consistency with the anticipated changes that were coming forward to the Agricultural Land Commission Act for contemplating secondary dwellings. The RU1 zone was left off just because we hadn't completed a full analysis, but we wanted to move forward with the RU3 zones and the other sections of the bylaw. We've since been able to complete the analysis for the RU1 zone, and in talking with a couple of property owners in the RU1 zone, they appreciated this change and recognized that it would provide for additional housing should they wish to consider this on their property if it is supported with the amendment. And the seventh and last is related to the subdivision zoning regulations. In working with our approving officer as well as planning staff, we've determined that there's an opportunity to condense the subdivision zoning requirements and the zoning bylaw to section them in one area to make it easier for the reader as well as staff to administer. So that's being proposed. As well, we've had a number of potential applicants come in asking questions about doing lot line adjustments. Currently, the way that the zoning bylaw has been written, they would need to meet the minimum size requirements. So in these instances where people are not creating additional lots, they're going to end up with a net number of lots that they currently have, and they're not shrinking the smallest parcel size below what their current smallest parcel size is. We can allow the approving officer to consider these lot line adjustments and that they would be in accordance with the zoning bylaw. This would also help with not having to bring forward variances to council for these considerations. And when we did our research, we found that this was consistent with many of our neighboring municipalities such as Langford, Colwood, and View Royal. So if this were to be supported, we anticipate that there would be a few applicants coming forward wanting to utilize this policy. But in the absence of it, we would foresee potential variance applications having to come before council for this consideration. So this was another opportunity to help expedite that process for the subdivision. So with that, that's the summary of the 7 sections that are being considered in this zoning amendment. And the recommendation at this point is for support of first and second reading and to proceed with the scheduling of a public hearing. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paolo. I appreciate, while your PowerPoint may just have been the highlights, the report certainly provided a lot of detail that was helpful to read, to sort of understand this is the problem, or maybe not the problem we're trying to solve, but here's something that you've identified and here's the potential change for improvement. So thank you very much for the report and just all the, just all of the thought that went in behind this. And also, again, recognizing that, okay, yes, we did adopt the bylaw, but here's an unintended consequence of that. And now here's the remedy for it. So I appreciate that. Okay, questions? Councillor St. Pierre, go ahead, please.
I also really appreciated the report, and I appreciate the intent of the report, which seems to be to streamline and to take out, honestly, language that may have caused issues. One recommendation that I would have to follow, or comment that I would have to follow, is that the Land Use Development Committee actually has some excellent people on board that could look at things like zoning amendments and provide feedback before they're made. And that might help to avoid issues like the lot area and so on and so forth. We've got people that have a vast depth of experience. And it's not that they would necessarily spot everything, but certainly I'm aware that on council, we don't have that sort of experience exactly. And that's why we have such a committee. So I'd love to see, I don't want to hold this back because we do want to streamline things, but I would love it if future zoning amendments would actually come before the Land Use Committee to get their feedback.
Okay, this did go to the Land Use Committee though in December though. Am I thinking of something else or?
The one of the attachments at the end of the report is the minutes from the December 15th, 2021 meeting of the Land Use Committee, where a majority of these items were considered. I think the reference to the lot area definition was a last minute addition that was added to this proposed zoning amendment. So the committee did not hear it, but certainly it's staff's intent that when these proposals are brought forward, that if we could establish a dialogue with the Land Use and Development Committee prior to coming forward for first and second reading, that would also help with not having to propose additional amendments afterwards. We'd like the opportunity, as we did with this one, to vet it through the Land Use and Development Committee, get their input, and then make those recommended wording choices to bring this forward to bylaw format with council.
Okay, great, thank you. Councillor Logans?
Thank you. Great report. I appreciate all of the work that's been put into making these amendments or bringing them forward. One question I had was about the SPIA setback and the 1 meter buffer. I wonder if that's something that's common in other municipalities or a standard that folks do in other municipalities, because really the QEP could just say 1 meter less and then have our 1 meter added to it after. So I don't really know what the purpose of that would be.
So the purpose of the 1 meter buffer is to recognize that there's a specific methodology that's utilized by the qualified environmental professional that has to meet that reporting with the province. So once it's been established that the streamside protection enhancement area is the specific distance for the riparian area, that's accepted by the province. And then the request to add the 1 meter buffer was to ensure that development wasn't happening right on the boundary of the streamside area. So at least there could be a 1 meter distance separation, and then development would occur. And we're typically observing that as it stands right now. So if it's been 15 meters, usually the development's been set back 17, 18, 20 meters. Even the real critical part is to find where is that streamside and protection enhancement area, have it identified, have the necessary recommendations implemented for the property, have the report also accepted by the province. And then our 1 meter was just to ensure that development wasn't happening right on that border of where that streamside protection enhancement area is. And this would ideally reduce the need for a variance, because really the variance at this point would be coming to reduce that 1 meter buffer at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, just looking at the clock, Councillor McMath, I'll go to you, please. Go ahead.
Thank you. I was just about to make a point of order. I support those two recommendations. You'll just have to excuse me. I have to start my shift, so I'll be leaving the meeting now.
Thank you for being with us, and we'll see you very soon. Take good care, okay? All right. Okay, other questions from anyone in the room? Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, so this is, so in the draft OCP, we're talking about a 30-meter setback from the ocean. So is this, how do these two things tie in together? If that's not too vague a question.
No, I believe I understand what you're asking. So in the draft OCP, The information that's being presented is based on best practices, the 30-meter reference. As it stands right now in the zoning bylaw, it's 15 meters for setbacks from the ocean. The other component to this is the other waterways. That's where the streamside protection enhancement area variances have been coming forward to council. Certainly, as we go through the OCP process, there will be consideration and discussion. This is something even discussed as early as today for staff to identify about the 15 versus 30 meters and what impacts, if going with one, does that now require an amendment to the zoning bylaw or staying with 15 meters, making that amendment in the OCP. But that's future considerations that council will have before them when staff bring forward the staff report.
Anything else? Okay. So the recommendation here then is that council give first and second reading to zoning amendment bylaw number 822 600-89 2022. And that council, I can read these together, right? Okay. And that council directs staff to schedule a public hearing for zoning amendment bylaw number 822 600-89 2022 in accordance with section 466 of the Local Government Act. So that is moved by Councillor Bateman and seconded by Councillor Logans. Anything further? Nope. Nope. Logans, anything? Nope. Okay. So I'll call the question. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Okay, thank you. 12.4 is next, please. Bylaw 838 for 7070 Maple Park Terrace.
Yeah, through your worship to council, it's just another proposed boundary adjustment to the Sioux sewer specified area, and that's to include 7070 Maple Park Terrace, where the new LPS main was installed on Maple Park earlier this year. So it's just for the consideration of inclusion of another property on Maple Park Terrace.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for staff? No, okay. Go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, no, I did a tour up there for the last two, what's the word, submissions, but I think at 7070, there was a very unique structure, sort of a large garage-like structure. Is that right, or am I missing the point? Mr. Carter.
Through your worship to Councillor Bateman, in terms of the structure on the property, this would just be for the inclusion. I couldn't speak to any of the structures on the property, or just need to understand more what the question is.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be a single family house. It seems to be a large roadside structure.
I think you might need to get a bit more.
Yeah, so I'll let it go. Thank you.
Just what that is, because I don't see that this has to do with the connection is.
Well, I was just wondering if it's a commercial operation, there could be greater water use than an average single family house. It's okay.
I believe it's in our residential zoned neighborhood.
Take a picture of it.
Yeah, I will.
That'll help. Okay. Okay. So our recommendation here is that council receive the petition for local area service for the property located at 7070 Maple Park Terrace, legally described as Lot 2, Section 21, Sooke District, Plan VIP 70196. And keep going, right? Okay, yeah. Okay, and that council give first, second, and third reading to Sioux Sewer Specified Area Amendment Bylaw number 838-147-43 2022. Okay, moved by Councillor Lajeunesse, seconded by Councillor Logans. All those in favor, please. Anyone opposed? No, that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, and then we have our bylaw number 839, fees and charges amendment. So we have our report here. Over to staff, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. 2 amendments to the fees and charges bylaw are being proposed this evening, both of which have been identified by fire department staff. The first proposed amendment is to address an increase in construction of mid-rise structures that may result in increased calls for rescues using a tower crane. Currently, Sooke has an agreement with the District of Saanich to assist with these types of rescues, and the proposed fee is to recoup associated costs. The second proposed amendment is to remove the fee for pyrotechnics fire safety review and replace it with one for general fire safety reviews. The fire department is requested to review fire safety plans outside of those required by the fireworks regulation bylaw, and this fee is to cover the cost of offering this service. Deputy Chief Barney is in attendance this evening via Zoom if there are any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Temple. I was just curious in regards to the district reaching out to Saanich and not a mutual aid partner, though. Is it just because Langford would be part of our mutual aid group, would it not be? Or is it just, maybe if you could just share a bit, why that just surprised me a little bit.
Your worship, yes, we did reach out to Langford to look to see if they'd be able to assist us in providing the service, and they indicated to us due to their manning, their daytime manning and things like that they would not be able to provide this service for us.
Oh, I see. Okay, because I think they're also in a composite where Saanich is a fully run fire department, like it's fully serviced day and night.
They're fully staffed, but yeah, with the another agreement that Langford has with View Royal and Colwood for their daytime mutual aid response and coverages throughout there, that they didn't have the manpower to be able to send us if we required them for a tower crane rescue.
Okay, it's sort of the signs of how our community is changing to begin the consideration, but certainly it's something to think about with, as I drive about the sites, my son likes to count the number of crankies that are out in the various sites there. We certainly see more than we ever have, but obviously there could be an incident that would require that. So thank you for taking that into consideration there. Okay, no, that makes sense. Thank you very much. Deputy Chief Barney, pardon me. Other questions? Any questions from members of council? Okay, so this here then would be that council give first, second, and third reading to the bylaw cited as fees and charges amendment bylaw number 839-752-05, 2022. It's moved by Councillor Lajeunesse and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Thank you. I just have a follow-up question just on that note. Like many of these sites do have security, but I'm just thinking back to when I lived in Victoria, there was an incident of some hooliganism that occurred on a crane that required a rescue. In that case, though, should that occur and our RCMP and such get involved, I guess that's where we would still look to pass any sort of fees on to said individual, if that would be the case, right? If they were actually caught.
Yes, Your Worship, if it's got to do with criminal code like trespass, the RCMP would enforce. I don't know if we would have any direct extra charges for that, but certainly there would be a court case, I would assume.
Okay, just something, okay. Anyway, it'll be fine. Anyway, just we're growing. It's one of those things that we think about. Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you. New business. So there's one item under 12.1 that came in regards to an MP looking for support. So this came from MP Peter Julian. And then it was brought to my attention that we've already sent a letter in support 6 months ago. So it's just there's so much going on. I don't remember everything, obviously. So it's the case here, and then I know that others may have received this and have been wondering, members of council, what, if anything, we could do. So we have done something already. So I guess an option, for now, I just think, well, the MPs need to do their job now. So I don't see the point of sending out another letter when we've already sent one. It's really up to the MPs to get to work and to make it happen. So I just wanted to update you with that. And so I would just suggest we receive it for information because we've done something. Okay.
I'll move receipt.
Okay, move receipt. Thank you by Counselor Logans and seconded by Counselor Bateman. Anything further? All those in favor, please. It's unanimous. Good. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll
Counselor
just
Bateman.
say that it's interesting. I don't know if you all know about the tagging of Whiff and Spit that happened maybe 3 weeks ago. And there was a swastika painted onto the back of the stop sign at the corner of Whiff and Spit Road and West Coast Road. And it's just, and then to read later that a third of Canadian young people either haven't heard of the Holocaust or don't believe it happened. So, you know, I'm glad to see that this kind of private members bill is proceeding. And, you know, history repeats if we keep forgetting. Cultural amnesia.
Yes, you are correct there.
Blah, de blah.
That would have been tough for residents to see that. I know that our team got on it pretty
Yes, I meant
quickly.
to say that.
Yeah, which was good. Okay,
Cleaned it up.
thank you, Counselor Bateman. Okay, so moving on to council verbal reports. How about I go online first, not to put the virtual folk on a spot here? Nothing from Counselor St. Pierre? Counselor Logans?
Nothing too much to report. I've been meeting with the Juan de Fuca Water Committee, but most information is in camera at this time.
Okay, well, thank you for attending those meetings. Anything in the room? Counselor Bateman?
Yeah, I feel like I've talked enough tonight, so I think I'll pass. Thanks.
Counselor Beddoes?
No, we've been through quite a lull those last 3 weeks. I must say it's been, of course, that was the 3 weeks I was supposed to be in Mexico, but I didn't go. So.
No, I think we just carry on and just remember that next Monday is an actual stat, but I don't think that's new to anyone except me who kept forgetting. So that was kind of nice. But anyway, it's just, yeah, I just look forward to meeting with real people. And that's coming from an introvert who said the other day, like, I actually miss being at a banquet. And some thought that was quite interesting, but I do. It sparked at the Chamber Awards, which is usually a banquet. And then I was with the president and their executive director handing out the awards. And so we went from one business to the next, honoring, meanwhile, in Sooke, the food bank, Forbes Pharmacy, Sheringham Distillery, Kathy's Corner for 2. The food bank got 3, including People's Choice, West Shack Auto, and then the West Coast Family Medical Clinic. I hope I didn't miss any of them. Kevin Laird, the editor of the Sioux News Mirror, accompanied us as well. So it was nice to be able to meet and to walk and to hand out the trophies. And sorry, Bosley's, the groomers within Bosley's were also recognized. So just sort of shows so many businesses just finding ways to carry on in what has been increasingly stressful times. And also receiving what very well-deserved awards. And that's where it came up. Like, I miss being at the banquet where you're applauding and celebrating and you're gathered together for that purpose, not necessarily people that you know, but you're all there to celebrate significant achievements. And so while it was a nice day to be out doing this, I just miss the camaraderie and just the feel of that excitement within our community. So it just, yeah, it is what it is. I'll leave it at that as well. Counselor Bateman, getting excited about the library, so that'll be something as well. It's really coming along, and they're really setting up now, which is exciting. So that's great when that happens next week. Okay, so we'll leave it at that. Did you wish to comment, Counselor Beddoes? Okay. And then we have item number 15, which is the release of closed meeting resolutions. So here for information is that council appoint the following community members to the Sooke Program of the Arts Spa Committee for a term expiring June 30th, 2022, Michelle Richard and Charles Dilba. And that brings us to item 16. So I'll look for a motion to adjourn the meeting, please. Moved by Counselor St. Pierre and seconded by Counselor Lajeunesse. Okay, happy Valentine's. Enjoy the rest of the evening. And we'll see you all soon in human form, hopefully. Take good care until then. Tomorrow, there's some announcement. Did we move? Did I move in second adjournment? Oh, I did. Yes, I didn't call the question. I didn't call the question. Sorry, I knew I was missing something. All those in favor of adjournment? Good grief. All those none opposed. Thank you. Good night. I'm signing off now. Take care.